Reality fractured on a Tuesday afternoon. Olivia Way was calibrating quantum entanglement sensors in her underground laboratory when the laws of physics hiccuped. The needle on her analog measurement device swung wildly before settling on an impossible reading, as if the very fabric of spacetime had become uncertain of its own existence. She might have dismissed it as equipment failure if not for the screams that began echoing through the facility's corridors. Not human screams, something far worse. They were the sounds of reality itself being torn apart, frequencies that shouldn't exist in our universe bleeding through from somewhere else. Dr. Way. Her research assistant burst through the door, face pale. You need to see this. The sky above their New Mexico facility had turned the color of television static, roiling with patterns that hurt the eyes. But it wasn't just their sky, social media was exploding with similar reports from around the globe. The entire planet was being enveloped in whatever this phenomenon was. That's when the voice spoke. Not with sound, but directly into the minds of every human on Earth. It felt ancient and vast, like the collective whisper of dying stars. Your species has been weighed, measured, found wanting. Olivia's quantum sensors were going haywire, detecting impossibilities that threatened to break her understanding of physics. Whatever this entity was, it existed outside the normal bounds of spacetime. Your existence is a cosmic accident. Your achievements meaningless. Your pride misplaced. Submit to oblivion. The sky darkened further, reality warping around the edges of perception. Birds fell dead from the sky, their tiny minds unable to process the wrongness of what was happening. Electronic systems began failing worldwide as the entity's presence interfered with everything humanity had built. That's when Marcus Rodriguez stepped out of his favorite diner in downtown Albuquerque, looked up at the reality-breaking horror in the sky, and said something that would change the course of human history. Nah. The former soldier had seen enough combat to know when someone was trying to intimidate through shock and awe. This was just that on a cosmic scale. And Marcus Rodriguez had never responded well to intimidation. The entity actually paused, its world-spanning presence focusing on this insignificant speck that dared to deny it. The sky above Marcus twisted into shapes that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Your defiance is meaningless, mote of dust. I am beyond your comprehension. Marcus took another sip of his coffee. Yeah? Then why you trying so hard to impress us? Across the city, others began following his lead. A grandmother tending her garden looked up at the cosmic horror and muttered, "Not today." A teenager on her way to school rolled her eyes at the apocalyptic display. A bus driver honked his horn at a tentacle of void that was blocking traffic. The entity's presence rippled with something almost like confusion. In all its eternal existence, it had never encountered prey that refused to acknowledge its cosmic superiority. At her laboratory, Olivia's instruments detected something extraordinary: microscopic fluctuations in the quantum field, centered around areas where humans were actively refusing to submit to terror. Their defiance was somehow affecting reality at the quantum level. She grabbed her phone and started coordinating with other physics labs around the world. If human consciousness was creating measurable effects in the quantum field, there might be a scientific explanation, and potential defense, against this entity. The voice boomed again, this time with an edge of frustration: your species will be erased. Your works will be unmade. Your very memory will be expunged from the cosmic record. A teenager in Tokyo looked up from his phone. Can you not? I've got finals tomorrow. A farmer in Kenya kept harvesting her crops. Come back later, I'm busy. A street vendor in Rio de Janeiro. Yeah, cosmic horror, very scary. You want to buy some empanadas or not? Each dismissal, each refusal to submit to terror, created tiny ripples in the quantum field. Olivia's global network of sensors tracked these ripples as they began to interfere with the entity's ability to maintain its reality warping effect. Marcus, who had started walking toward the physics facility after seeing the news reports about Dr. Wei's readings, found himself grinning. Humanity's greatest weakness, its stubborn, irrational pride, was becoming its greatest defense against cosmic horror. The entity lashed out, trying to demonstrate its power. City blocks were twisted into impossible geometries. The laws of physics were locally rewritten. Probability itself went haywire as quantum uncertainties cascaded into the macro scale. But everywhere these effects manifested, humans looked on with increasingly casual dismissal. A construction worker in Dubai watched his building turn into an M.C. Escher painting and just sighed, "Gonna need to file so much paperwork for this." When Olivia's lab finally lost power, she switched to battery backups and kept working. The entity's presence was causing worldwide technological failures, but human ingenuity adapted. People rigged hand-cranked generators, dug out old analog equipment, and kept going out of sheer spite. The voice spoke again, but now there was something new in its cosmic resonance: uncertainty. Your resistance is unprecedented. Submit to your inevitable end. Marcus finally reached the physics facility, where security let him in after he explained his military background and experience with unusual phenomena. He found Olivia surrounded by white boards covered in quantum equations. The entity exists in a quantum superposition of states, she explained without looking up from her calculations. Its power comes from forcing our reality to conform to its impossible geometry. But human consciousness, specifically our ability to simply reject what it's showing us, is collapsing those quantum states in ways it didn't expect. So what you're saying, Marcus grinned, is that we're annoying it to death. Olivia finally looked up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Not exactly. But our refusal to accept its version of reality is literally changing the quantum mechanics of how its power works here. The more humans simply dismiss it, the less power it has, Marcus finished. Because we're basically saying, nah, that's not how things work here, and reality is listening to us instead of it. The sky outside had become a writhing mass of impossible colors and geometries. The entity was trying harder than ever to break humanity's will through sheer spectacle. But with each passing hour, more humans were choosing to simply ignore it and go about their lives. The voice spoke one final time that day, and now there was definitely confusion in its cosmic tone. This is not how it is supposed to be. You were meant to break. To beg. To submit. From a food truck in Los Angeles, "Sir, this is a Wendy's." From a librarian in London, "Could you keep it down? This is a quiet zone." From a taxi driver in Cairo, yeah, cosmic horror, very impressive. The meter's still running though. As the first day of the invasion drew to a close, humanity had discovered its greatest weapon against cosmic horror, the ability to simply not care. The entity's power relied on forcing human minds to accept its impossible nature. Instead, humans were forcing it to deal with their stubborn insistence on their own version of reality. Olivia's global network of sensors showed the quantum fluctuations growing stronger. Humanity's collective dismissal was creating a feedback loop that was actively weakening the entity's hold on our reality. As night fell, Marcus helped Olivia set up more monitoring equipment. So what happens next? She looked at her readings, then at the twisted sky outside. I don't know. But for the first time since this started, I think we actually have a chance. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten, Marcus finished with a smile. Above them, the cosmic entity churned in confusion, facing something it had never encountered in all its eons of existence, a species too proud to accept its own cosmic insignificance, too stubborn to submit to superior power, and too busy with their daily lives to properly appreciate the horror of their situation. The invasion had begun. But humanity's response had changed everything. By the second day, humanity had turned cosmic horror into a meme. Social media platforms that managed to stay online were flooded with jokes about the entity. People posted selfies with impossible geometries in the background, adding captions like, "Felt cute, might defy cosmic horror later idk." T-shirt vendors were already selling shirts with, "I survived the reality crisis and all I got was this lousy t-shirt," printed on them. The entity was not amused. "Your mockery changes nothing," it broadcasted into every human mind. "Your reality will be unmade." A college student live-streaming the phenomenon yawned dramatically. "Bestie, you've been saying that for like 24 hours now. Either do it or don't." Olivia Way's quantum readings showed something remarkable happening. Each act of dismissal, each joke, each casual rejection of cosmic horror was creating what she called reality anchors, points where human consciousness was actively reinforcing normal physics against the entity's influence. "It's like we're voting on how reality should work," she explained to Marcus as they reviewed the data. "And right now, humanity is winning through sheer force of collective stubbornness." The entity tried a new approach. Instead of grand displays of power, it began targeting individuals with personalized visions of cosmic truth, revelations that should have driven them mad with understanding. A barista in Seattle was shown the true shape of reality, an infinite fractal of overlapping dimensions where human existence was less significant than a dust mote in an ocean. She responded by asking if the entity wanted whipped cream on its existential crisis. A taxi driver in Mumbai was granted vision of the entity's true form, a geometry that existed in 15 dimensions simultaneously. He charged it extra for taking up more than 4 seats. Each failed attempt to break human spirits created more blind spots in the entity's influence, areas where its power simply couldn't take hold because the local humans refused to acknowledge its supremacy. Marcus, now working with military contacts worldwide, began noticing patterns. "The entity's getting desperate," he told Olivia during one of their data review sessions. "It's trying smaller, more targeted attacks instead of the big shows of force. But that's actually making it easier for people to dismiss." Olivia nodded, pointing to her latest readings. "The quantum interference patterns are changing. It's like, imagine reality is a pond. At first, the entity was trying to create huge waves to swamp us. Now it's making smaller splashes, but that's just creating ripples that humans can easily smooth out through collective disbelief." In New York, a hot dog vendor had set up his cart directly under a floating eye of madness that wept tears of impossible colors. His sales had never been better. Tourists loved taking selfies with cosmic horror as a backdrop. The entity's frustration manifested in increasingly erratic displays. Cities were temporarily transformed into crystalline structures that sang songs of madness. Gravity reversed itself in random locations. The sun briefly turned green. Humanity responded by turning it into social media content. "OMG, my city just turned into non-Euclidean geometry again, face with rolling eyes #cosmic horror problems. Dear reality-ending cosmic entity, your light show is disrupting my cat's napping schedule. Please desist. Karen. Anyone else's gravity reversed? Had to tie my coffee cup to my desk lol." But beneath the jokes and memes, serious work was being done. Olivia's network of researchers had identified a crucial weakness in the entity's power. It relied on human minds accepting and processing its impossible nature. When humans instead chose to simply categorize it as Tuesday's problem and move on with their lives, it created quantum-level disruptions in its ability to affect our reality. Marcus, meanwhile, had helped organize what he called reality enforcement zones, areas where high concentrations of particularly stubborn humans could maintain normal physics through sheer collective willpower. These zones became safe havens where sensitive equipment could operate normally, allowing scientists like Olivia to continue their research. The entity tried changing tactics again, attempting to communicate directly with world leaders. It offered knowledge beyond human comprehension, power beyond mortal understanding, secrets of the universe itself. The response from most governments was bureaucratic red tape. Please fill out Form XJ-7B to schedule an apocalypse. Your application for reality restructuring has been received and will be processed in 5 to 7 business days. All cosmic entities must comply with local zoning regulations regarding dimensional warping. By the end of the second day, something unprecedented was happening. The entity's attempts to unmake reality were being actively countered by humanity's stubborn insistence on maintaining their version of normal. Reality had become a tug-of-war between cosmic horror and human obstinacy. In her lab, Olivia made a breakthrough. Look at these patterns, she showed Marcus. Every time the entity tries to assert its version of reality, humans basically respond with, "No, we don't do that here," and the quantum field actually listens. It's like, reality itself is more influenced by 7 billion humans collectively saying, "Nah," than by one cosmic entity saying, "Bow before my power." Marcus laughed. So we're basically carrying an eldritch horror into submission? In quantum mechanical terms? Yes, actually. Olivia couldn't help but smile. We're literally asking to speak to reality's manager, and reality is taking our side. Outside, the sky had become a kaleidoscope of impossible colors as the entity tried increasingly desperate displays of power. But now there were visible gaps in its influence, places where normal blue sky peeked through because the locals had simply decided they preferred it that way. A group of teenagers had started a trend of pointing at reality-warped areas and saying, "That's so last hour." Remarkably, the affected areas would often revert to normal within minutes. The entity's voice, when it came again, held something that sounded almost like exasperation. Your species defies comprehension. Your resistance follows no logical pattern. Yeah, we get that a lot, Marcus muttered, reviewing reports of more reality enforcement zones popping up worldwide. Humanity's stubborn streak was proving to be a force that even cosmic horror couldn't easily overcome. As night fell on the second day, Olivia's sensors detected a new pattern emerging. The entity's power was fluctuating wildly, as if it was losing control of its own influence over reality. Each human rejection of its power was creating cascading effects, weakening its hold not just locally but globally. It's never encountered anything like us, Olivia realized. It's used to species either fighting back and losing or submitting instantly. We're doing neither, we're just refusing to take it seriously. And it has no protocols for handling that. Marcus grinned. So we're basically destroying cosmic horror with dad jokes and memes? That, Olivia said, watching her quantum reading spike with each new act of human defiance, is exactly what we're doing. The war for reality continued, but the balance was shifting. Humanity had found its weapon, not technology, not military might, but the simple, stubborn refusal to acknowledge defeat. And somewhere in the quantum foam of reality, an ancient cosmic entity was learning a painful lesson about underestimating a species that could turn existential terror into a trending hashtag. Dawn of the third day brought an unexpected discovery: spite had quantum properties. Olivia Way had been awake for nearly 48 hours, sustained by coffee and the kind of stubborn determination that seemed to be humanity's defining trait lately. Her lab's quantum sensors had picked up something remarkable: the collective human rejection of cosmic horror was creating stable quantum fields that actually reinforced normal reality. It's like we're knitting reality back together through pure stubbornness, she explained to Marcus, who had taken to sleeping on her lab's couch between coordinating global resistance efforts. Every time someone looks at cosmic horror and basically says, "Whatever," they're creating a tiny patch of normalized spacetime. The entity had noticed too. Its attacks were becoming more focused, more desperate. Instead of grand displays of power, it began targeting the quantum researchers studying its effects. Reality warped particularly harshly around physics laboratories worldwide. "Your science cannot comprehend my nature," it broadcast directly into the minds of researchers globally. "Cease your futile measurements." A physicist in Berlin responded by turning her quantum readings into a catchy EDM track. It went viral within hours. Marcus, reviewing global response patterns, noticed something interesting. The entity's getting predictable, he told Olivia. It's falling into patterns we can track. Almost like it's losing control, Olivia finished, studying her latest data. The quantum field interactions are stabilizing. Every time it tries to impose impossible physics, human consciousness collectively goes, "That's not how things work here," and reality agrees with us. The entity tried a new approach, selective reality manipulation. Traffic lights in major cities began showing impossible colors. Gravity began working sideways in random locations. Time briefly ran backward in several small towns. Humanity's response was peak human nature, they adapted. In Tokyo, commuters simply added, "Check which way gravity goes today," to their morning routines. London pedestrians treated impossible traffic signals like any other minor inconvenience, tooting disapprovingly when walk signals turned into screaming void portals. A small town in Ohio where time ran backward just adjusted their schedules accordingly, holding yesterday's meetings tomorrow. Olivia's global network of researchers had begun calling it the quantum spite effect. The more humans treated cosmic horror as an annoying inconvenience rather than an existential threat, the more normal physics reasserted itself. "It's beautiful, really," she told Marcus, showing him the latest readings. Every eye roll, every dismissive wave, every "yeah, whatever," they're all creating quantum-level reinforcements of standard reality. We're literally annoying an eldritch horror into submission through collective indifference. The entity's frustration manifested in increasingly bizarre attempts to regain control. It created impossible architecture in city centers, turning buildings into Escher-like constructions that defied geometry. City planning departments simply started issuing citations for zoning violations. A shopping mall in Minnesota was transformed into a non-Euclidean nightmare realm. The mall cops just added "patrol fifth-dimensional spaces" to their rounds and continued enforcing the "no skateboarding" policy across all possible geometries. Marcus had taken to mapping what he called peak spite zones, areas where human dismissal of cosmic horror was particularly strong. These zones were expanding, creating stable pockets of normal reality that gradually spread outward. "Look at this pattern," he showed Olivia, pointing to a global map of reality stabilization zones. "It's like an immune system response. Every time the entity tries something new, humans in that area basically go meh and reality snaps back to normal even stronger than before." The entity's voice, when it came again, held something almost like pleading. "Your reality is a fraction of true existence. Why do you cling to it so?" A teenager in Mumbai looked up from his phone. "Because we've got stuff to do, my dude. Some of us have homework due." That's when Olivia made her biggest breakthrough yet. The quantum readings showed that human consciousness wasn't just defending reality, it was actively reshaping it. Every dismissal of cosmic horror was like a vote for how reality should work, and reality was becoming increasingly democratic. "We're not just resisting the entity," she explained to Marcus, excitement making her forget her exhaustion. "We're teaching reality to prefer our version of physics. The more we collectively insist that things should work normally, the more reality agrees with us instead of the entity." The entity tried one last grand gesture, turning the moon into a giant eye that wept tears of antimatter. Humanity responded by turning it into a meme format. Within hours, social media was flooded with "crying moon" jokes. Reality hiccuped, and the moon went back to normal. That's when they noticed something unprecedented in Olivia's quantum readings. The entity's power wasn't just being blocked, it was being reflected back. Every human rejection of cosmic horror was creating a kind of quantum mirror, bouncing the entity's reality warping effects back at it. "It's like..." Marcus searched for the right words, "like reality itself is getting tired of the entity's nonsense and siding with us?" Olivia nodded, watching her quantum displays show increasing stability in normal spacetime. "Exactly. We're not just saying no to cosmic horror, we're convincing the fundamental forces of the universe to say no with us. In the sky above, the entity's presence was visibly wavering. Its attempts to unmake reality were being met with increasingly solid resistance as humanity's collective indifference hardened into an impenetrable shield of pure spite. A new pattern was emerging in the quantum readings, one that suggested the entity wasn't just failing to impose its will on reality. It was starting to question its own nature, faced with a species that could turn cosmic horror into social media content. As the third day drew to a close, Olivia and Marcus watched their readings show more and more of reality stabilizing under the weight of human stubbornness. You know what the entity's biggest mistake was? Marcus asked, looking at the steadily normalizing sky. Olivia raised an eyebrow questioningly. It tried to prove it was superior to us. Nothing makes humans more stubborn than someone acting superior. Above them, the cosmic entity churned in confusion, facing a species that had turned its greatest weapon, reality manipulation, into a trending topic complete with its own hashtag. The war for reality was entering its final phase, and humanity's greatest weapon was proving to be its collective ability to simply not care about cosmic superiority. On the fourth day, the cosmic entity had an existential crisis. For the first time in its eternal existence, it faced a paradox: a species whose greatest weakness, their irrational pride, had become their greatest strength. Every attempt to break humanity's spirit had only reinforced their stubborn refusal to submit. In her lab, Olivia Way watched her quantum readings with growing amazement. The entity's power is becoming erratic, she told Marcus, pointing to the fluctuating patterns on her screens. It's like it's losing confidence in its own nature. The entity's latest attempts to unmake reality had become almost half-hearted. Cities would briefly turn inside out, then snap back to normal at the first human sigh of annoyance. Gravity would reverse itself, only to correct course when someone complained about their coffee spilling. Your defiance defies cosmic law, the entity broadcast, its usually overwhelming presence now tinged with uncertainty. A street musician in Paris kept playing his accordion. Yeah? File a complaint. The quantum readings showed something unprecedented. The entity's attempts to impose its version of reality were being actively overwritten by human expectations. Reality itself seemed to be developing a preference for humanity's stubborn insistence on normalcy. Marcus, coordinating with his global network of reality enforcement zones, noticed the pattern first. It's not just that we're resisting, he explained to Olivia. We're actually changing how reality responds to the entity. Every time we dismiss its power, we're teaching the universe to do the same. The entity tried a new approach: philosophical debate. Your species is insignificant in the cosmic scale, it argued directly into human minds. Your existence is meaningless against the vastness of infinity. A philosophy professor in Athens looked up from her coffee. Bold of you to assume meaning requires cosmic significance. Have you considered that meaning is subjective and self-determined? The entity actually paused, its reality-warping presence flickering like a stunned silence. Olivia's sensors went wild. Look at this, she called to Marcus. When we challenge its assumptions, it creates quantum-level disruptions in its own power structure. It's like, we're making it doubt itself. The entity had never encountered doubt before. In all its eternal existence, it had been absolute in its cosmic superiority. But humanity's persistent refusal to acknowledge that superiority was creating cracks in its certainty. It tried again: I am beyond your comprehension. Your minds cannot grasp my true nature. A quantum physicist in Mumbai responded, yet here we are, measuring your quantum fluctuations with human-made instruments. Curious. Each logical challenge, each dismissal of its cosmic significance, each human refusal to be impressed created more instability in the entity's power. Its attempts to unmake reality became increasingly inconsistent, like a speaker losing confidence in their speech. Marcus had started mapping what he called doubt cascades, places where human skepticism had created chain reactions of reality normalization. It's like we're teaching the cosmos to fact-check the entity, he told Olivia. The entity's next attempt at intimidation backfired spectacularly. It showed humanity visions of their cosmic insignificance, Earth as a tiny mote in an infinite void. Humanity responded with selfies. Look how cute we look from this angle. #Cosmic perspective. Olivia's readings showed something remarkable happening at the quantum level. The entity's power was becoming entangled with human consciousness in unexpected ways. Every time it tried to impose cosmic horror, it was forced to process human responses, and those responses were changing it. It's like she struggled to find the right words, like we're infecting it with human perspective. Every time it tries to show us our insignificance, we show it the significance we create for ourselves. And it has to process that paradox. The entity's voice, when it came again, held something almost like frustration. Why do you not despair at your cosmic meaninglessness? A teenager doing homework, bold of you to assume we're not already dealing with that in therapy. A barista making coffee, existential dread was so last century. A taxi driver, you think cosmic meaninglessness is gonna get me out of paying rent? Each response forced the entity to confront a species that had already faced its own cosmic insignificance and chosen to create meaning anyway. Its power fluctuated wildly as it tried to process this paradox. Marcus, reviewing global response patterns, noticed something crucial. It's not just that we're resistant to cosmic horror, he told Olivia. We've already integrated existential dread into our daily lives. The entity's trying to use a weapon we've already developed immunity to. Olivia's quantum readings confirmed it. The entity's attempts to impose cosmic meaninglessness were being met with a species that had already looked into the void and decided to post memes about it. The entity tried one last philosophical attack: your individual lives are temporary, meaningless against the eternal. A hospice nurse responded while checking on her patients, the temporary nature of life is exactly what gives it meaning. Would you like a pamphlet about our grief counseling services? That response created the largest quantum disruption yet. The entity's presence actually stuttered, like a computer encountering an impossible calculation. As the fourth day drew to a close, Olivia and Marcus watched their readings show something unprecedented. The entity wasn't just failing to impose its will on reality, it was beginning to question its own understanding of existence. We're not just resisting it anymore, Olivia realized, looking at the data. We're making it question everything it thought it knew about consciousness, meaning, and existence. Above them, the cosmic entity churned in existential uncertainty, faced with a species that had not only refused to break under cosmic horror but had somehow turned that refusal into a force that was changing the entity itself. The final confrontation was approaching, but it would not be fought with weapons or power. It would be fought with philosophy, human stubbornness, and the uncomfortable questions that arise when an eternal being encounters a species that can turn existential dread into a social media trend. On the fifth day, humanity broke physics with pure spite. The entity's presence had become fragmented, its once overwhelming cosmic horror now flickering like a bad television signal. Olivia Way's quantum readings showed reality itself seemed to be taking sides, preferring humanity's stubborn version of physics over the entity's attempts at unmaking existence. Your resistance has become problematic, the entity broadcast, its voice in human minds now carrying an unmistakable note of confusion. Yeah, we get that a lot, Marcus replied from Olivia's lab, not even looking up from his coordination maps. The casual dismissal created ripples in the quantum field that actually made the entity flinch. Olivia's global network of researchers had discovered something unprecedented. Human consciousness was not just resisting the entity's reality warping, it was actively rewriting the rules of how reality responded to cosmic forces. It's like we're teaching the universe new habits, she explained, showing Marcus the latest readings. Every time humans collectively say, "That's not how things work here," reality itself is learning to agree with us instead of the cosmic horror trying to unmake it. The entity made one last attempt at demonstrating its power. It took control of every electronic display on Earth simultaneously, showing humanity the true nature of reality, an infinite void of meaninglessness where their existence was less than a rounding error in the cosmic equation. Humanity responded by turning off their phones and going to lunch. That casual dismissal created the largest quantum disruption yet. The entity's presence actually stuttered, like a record scratch in the fabric of reality. "What? What are you?" it broadcast, genuine bewilderment in its cosmic voice. A food truck vendor in Los Angeles answered while flipping burgers, "Busy. Come back after rush hour." Each dismissal, each casual rejection of cosmic horror created cascading effects in the quantum field. Reality was not just resisting the entity's influence, it was actively beginning to prefer humanity's version of how things should work. Olivia's sensors detected something new: the entity's power was being reflected back on itself. Every time it tried to impose cosmic meaninglessness on humanity, their collective response forced it to confront questions it had never considered in its eternal existence. "Your pride blinds you to cosmic truth," it tried again. A physicist in Geneva responded without looking up from her work, "Or maybe it lets us see a truth you've missed. Have you considered that meaning isn't found in cosmic scale, but created through conscious choice?" The quantum reading spiked. The entity's presence wavered like a mirage in desert heat. Marcus, watching the global response patterns, noticed it first. "It's having an identity crisis," he told Olivia. "Every time humans refuse to accept its version of reality, it has to process why its cosmic truth isn't actually true." The entity's next attempt backfired spectacularly. It tried to show humanity their place in the cosmic hierarchy, but humanity's stubborn refusal to acknowledge that hierarchy created a paradox that the entity couldn't resolve. "I am beyond your comprehension," it insisted, its voice now carrying an edge of desperation. "And yet here you are, trying really hard to make us comprehend you," a literature professor in Oxford noted while grading papers. "Bit contradictory, isn't it?" That logical paradox created quantum ripples that shook reality itself. The entity's presence flickered violently as it tried to process this contradiction. Olivia's readings showed something remarkable: the quantum field was reorganizing itself around human consciousness. Reality was choosing sides, and it was choosing the species that insisted on creating meaning rather than the entity trying to unmake it. "Reality itself bends to my will," the entity broadcast. A construction worker in Dubai wiped sweat from his brow. "Not in this jurisdiction, it doesn't. You'll need to file for permits first." The bureaucratic response created a cascade effect in the quantum field. The entity's power wasn't just being rejected, it was being regulated by human stubbornness into something manageable, comprehensible, and most importantly, ignorable. That's when Olivia made the final breakthrough. "Look at these patterns," she showed Marcus. "Every time humans dismiss its power, we're not just resisting it, we're teaching reality itself that cosmic horror is optional. We're literally changing the fundamental laws of physics through collective indifference." The entity made one last, desperate attempt to assert its cosmic dominance. It tried to unmake the sun. Humanity collectively sighed and turned on their flashlights. That simple, practical response to cosmic horror created a quantum feedback loop that the entity couldn't process. Its presence began to unravel, not through violence or force, but through the simple impossibility of maintaining cosmic horror in the face of human practicality. "Your species," it broadcast, its voice now fading, "your species makes no sense." "Yeah," Marcus agreed, watching the readings show reality steadily normalizing. "That's kind of our thing." In its final moments, the entity experienced something entirely new in its eternal existence: it laughed. A cosmic sound that rippled through reality itself, not in mockery or superiority, but in genuine amusement and perhaps a touch of respect. "You have taught the infinite something new," it acknowledged as its presence began to fade. Perhaps meaning is not found in cosmic scale after all. As the entity dissolved back into the quantum foam of reality, its final message echoed in every human mind. Your defiance. Your pride. Your stubborn refusal to submit. These are not weaknesses. They are fascinating. Olivia's readings showed reality returning to normal, but not quite the same normal as before. Humanity's collective dismissal of cosmic horror had left its mark on the fundamental laws of physics. Reality itself had learned to prefer human stubbornness over cosmic certainty. So what now? Marcus asked, watching the sky return to its ordinary blue. Olivia looked at her quantum readings, showing a universe forever changed by humanity's collective shrug at cosmic horror. Now we go back to work. But we do it knowing something new about ourselves. What's that? She smiled. That humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, our weapons, or our intelligence. It's our ability to look at cosmic horror and say, nah, we've got stuff to do. Above them, the sky was blue again, but somewhere in the quantum foam of reality, an eternal entity had learned a valuable lesson about underestimating a species that could face the infinite void and respond with a meme. The apocalypse had been cancelled, not through force or power, but through humanity's unique ability to simply not care about cosmic superiority. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, other eternal entities took note, the small blue planet was best left alone. Its inhabitants had mastered the most powerful force in the universe, the ability to look at cosmic horror and ask it to please move, because it was blocking traffic. End.